Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you are having an amazing day. I am here with a very highly requested video, my first book YouTube. So I am going to be showing you guys and giving like a very small little recap slash review of how I felt about it and if I would recommend it. All of the books that I've read so far this year, which I believe is 20. So, and as well, I loan out my books to like everyone I know, because if I find something good or that I know someone will like, I'm just like, take it, read it, take it. So I am missing a few, but I'll just obviously like insert a cover photo of what they look like. So I'm gonna go in no particular order, but I am gonna rate each book out of 10. So I'm starting off so strong with, I'm not gonna say it's the best book I've read this year, but I'm rating it a 10 out of 10, and I think only like 2 or 3 books have a 10 out of 10. This book was amazing. I would read it again and again and again, and I've currently lent it to my mum, I think. I hope she has it. It is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. I was so surprised at how much I loved this book. If you know me, you know that I'm a non-fiction, I love medical, I love biographies, kind of like girly with my, you know, what I like in books. And this is exactly that. It was like a personal recount of a junior doctor in the NHS. He's an OBGYN, so like a women's pregnancy baby doctor. And it's not frilly. It's not romanticized, it's harsh and it's brutal and it's sad, but it's so funny. He just has this incredible gift of like on one page. I don't cry very easily. There's not a lot of books. I could probably count on one hand how many books have made me cry. But I was crying, I was laughing. It was just so emotional in a good way. And it was so important, like such an important read, because it says so much about like the state of healthcare in the UK and free healthcare and like the strain on resources, and it is just so good. And there is an adaptation on, what is it on? Yes, so This Is Going to Hurt is on Binge and BBC. And I think they did such a good adaptation of it. It's quite different to the books. I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll watch it, but I've already read the book and I just imagine that every case of every patient's gonna be the same. Completely different, completely different. There's like a big twist in there. There's like an added character in there. It's so good. So like literally 10 out of 10. So highly, highly, highly recommend This Is Going to Hurt. And for all of my Adam Kay / medical book lovers, Adam Kay just released a new book, his 3rd book, and I actually bought it yesterday. Sorry, I'm on a tangent. This is his new book, and I'm gonna read this so fast. I'm currently reading The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, the Oliver Sacks book about neurology, but this is gonna be next. Sorry, I'm getting really sidetracked. Anyway, number 1, fantastic, 10 out of 10. Loved it, would highly recommend to literally anybody. Next up is the second Adam Kay book that I read, The Night Shift Before Christmas, and this is petite, it's cute. It's basically the same as his first book, This Is Going to Hurt, but all of them are Christmas themed cases. Foreign bodies that are crackers, and it's so fun because I don't know, he's just so funny. I don't think I cried in this one. This one was hilarious, but again, too small. I need more. I think I gave that one a 9.5 out of 10. We then have The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, this book here. This I was recommended by my professor, who said if you are working in biology / research, specifically cell biology, you need to read this book. It's a really important read. And I was just like, say less. Like, it was very good, and I didn't know that they actually did an adaptation and the main character is Oprah, so that's a fun fact. The book is very good. It has like a really important, I guess, message about the ethics. So it's about science and about informed consent and ethics and race and women's health, and it's basically about a woman who I can't remember, is it set in the 20s? The 1920s? It was a while ago. And this Black American African woman has, I think it's cervical cancer. Gosh, I can't even remember. I'm the worst storyteller. She has some kind of women's cancer, and it's very sad. She dies from it eventually, and she has all these small children. But what the doctors did was basically take these cells, these cancerous, malignant cells, and just expand them like infinitely, because they're just exponentially growing. and they're called HeLa cells, H-E-L-A. You might have heard of them before if you're in science, but basically this entire cell line originated from this one woman who didn't give consent for anyone to use her cells. We have these huge scientific research companies that are making massive profits from selling and distributing these cells, but she never saw a cent, and they're literally her cells. And so that's pretty much the premise of the story, but it's a really great story. There was a bit of a slow patch, sort of a third of the way into the book, and I was just like, okay. A lot of it's about the family, interviewing the family, and I'm just more like, I want to know the science, please. But very good read, very important. I would recommend it to anyone who's in science or anyone who's interested. I gave that one a 7 out of 10. Next up is this little cute book. I love this cover. It's Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, and I don't know why I read this. I think it came up on my Goodreads as like a suggested. If you guys have Goodreads, be friends with me on Goodreads. Let's be friends on Goodreads. My username is just Colroyd Queen. I'll put it here. If you don't know what Goodreads is, it's a free app and website that's just sort of like, I guess, social media, Facebook, kind of like Instagram, but all of it is about books. So you be friends with people and you post what you're reading and your reviews, and you can make like a little book bucket list, note down everything that you've read, and so you know like, oh, my goal for this year is to read 30 books and currently I've read 20, and it's just like a really fun little community there. So let's be friends on Goodreads. Anyway, this was so strange to me. It's written quite nicely, but basically it's kind of like a friendship love story. It's very short and it's not my cup of tea. It's fiction, but it's quite arty and abstract and alternative. And I mean, if that's your vibe, then I think that you would really like it. It's well written, but it's just not really my vibe. It wasn't a page turner for me. I just feel pretty indifferent towards this one. Oh, apparently I gave this a 4 out of 10. Yeah, okay, so I noted that I feel really indifferent towards it. The story didn't go anywhere, but it was a nice story about friendship. So 4 seems harsh, maybe a 5. Okay. Next up is Second Sons. And again, I don't have this book because I loaned it out to the ophthalmologist that I work with. Basically, non-fiction medical, you guys already know, but this book, oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever been so humbled by a book in my entire life. Like, if you need a reality check about basic things like, oh, we're able to, you know, where we live, have free healthcare, and, you know, if we go blind, we just go to the doctor. And it's basically about an American doctor and is he Nepalese? I think he is Nepalese. Doctor, and they work together to form like this non-for-profit type situation in Nepal to just do these cataracts that are really affordable. I think they were like $15 US a pop for all of the instrumentation, all of the surgery costs, like $15 per patient, and they just sort of rely on donations, and they're getting through like hundreds of eye surgeries a day and just like curing the blind in Nepal. And it's amazing. Like, some people come on like a 14-day voyage through the mountains, like literally through like Mount Everest region, and come because they're completely blind. They can't work, they can't support their families, and like it's their last hope, and they're just like terrified, and they, you know, obviously don't speak English or anything, and they're just like, yeah, can you fix my eyes? And they just bing bang boom, 15-minute cataract surgery, $15 US, thank you very much, you have your sight back. Like, it's just, it's so good. And he's also like a mountaineer, the US doctor. He's like a really fun, adventurous guy, and yeah, it's a really fun read, like a really deep read, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it's really important if you are interested in medicine, or just, I guess, in humanitarianism in general. A really good read. I gave this a 9 out of 10. That's a pretty good one. This next one is another rarity. It is a 10 out of 10. It is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Now, I'm sure most people have heard of this book, unless you've been living under a rock. It's one of the very few fiction books that I have read this year, and I was recommended it by like 4 of my closest girlfriends. Like, they all read it, and they're just like, it is quite literally the best thing I've ever read. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, I'll read it. Amazing. I quite literally wasn't physically able to put it down. I just sat there straight and read for like a day. I finished it in a day. I think I read it for like 8 hours or 9 hours. It was so good. It was so good. It was fiction, but it felt so real. I loved the writing. I was so pleasantly surprised. And then the twist at the end, oh my God, brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I don't know how people come up with this stuff, but Oh, I would read that again for sure. The format of the book is basically like interview style, but it's also in like first person from the author's, sorry, from the author who is the protagonist of the book. So the character that's the author, it's from her perspective, and it's just real. And again, it's not a happy ending book, which I really appreciate. It's a real ending book. I cried, I think, and it was just so good, and I love it. So highly recommend that. It's basically, yeah, about this old Hollywood actress who has had 7 husbands. I think it's very loosely based on Elizabeth Taylor's life. She goes through, she lives a very secretive life, I suppose, when it comes to like publicity. And then when she's very old, she finally reaches out to this one really random kind of young like author writer who's just starting out, and she's like, why the hell would you choose me? Like, I'm so random. And she chooses her, and it's a bit suspicious, and she just says, I'm going to tell you everything, and all that I ask from you is that you don't publish it until I die. And so she just tells her about all of her 7 husbands and her entire life up until now. So good. Amazing. Loved it. Also, if you have any like conflicting opinions to me, like if you hated it, like please tell me, like tell me why. Like let's discuss. The next book, oh, okay, this is the lowest rated book. This is probably the lowest rating I've ever given a book. I think this book made me so mad. I hated it. I hated it. And I read on it has a pretty high rating on Goodreads, and my mum read it many years ago, and she was like, it's garbage, don't waste your time. And I was like, I have to, it's medical, and Goodreads told me to, so I did. Shockingly bad, shockingly bad. I had really high hopes to start with. I'm giving this a 1 out of 10. It's The Silent Patient. Garbage. Okay, this book is written so poorly. Like, the writer did no research into the field of psychology, psychiatry, medical ethics, and like, it's just so clear that he is a man who doesn't know how women think or how women feel. Just like some of the sex scenes and stuff, I was just like I couldn't even read them. I was like, this is so bad. The writing is so poor. The plot is full of holes. Like, I had to keep stopping and being like, what? Basically, I think this writer sat down with an idea of a plot twist at the end and just forced a story to go around that ending that is the plot twist. And the plot twist, you will see it coming. It is so obvious. I literally saw the ending coming in the first chapter. I was like, surely this isn't gonna happen. It did. It was so bad, and I hated it, and I wish that I could get that time of my life back. And I strongly urge you even to read it and then just agree with me and tell me how much you hate it, or don't read it. It's up to you. Let me see what I put on my notes. So every time I read a book I have on my Notion, like I always like make a little summary. And strong undertones of misogyny. All the author cared about was the plot twist, which was so forced. Awful, fake, cringe. I hated this book. Worst one I've read this year so far. I concur with my previous self. Okay, the next book is like completely different. This is a medical / science non-fiction. So it's called Genome, and I expected this to be an easier read than it was. This is probably one of the most scientifically dense books I've ever read, more so than textbooks. It has a high level of assumed scientific knowledge, and it's just really dense. But in saying that, it is really good. It's so interesting. So all of the chapters are broken up into each chromosome. So 23 chapters, 23 pairs of chromosomes. And each one focuses on, so here we've got chromosome 11, personality. And in personality, we talk about personality disorders, we talk about deficits, we talk about excess, and then we talk about the scientific findings and discoveries and the significant people for each chromosome. And then we get to the end, and it's more modern. It talks about sequencing, and it's really good. So if you're a science girly or boy, read it. It's really good. I really liked it, but just keep in mind that I was reading this at the same time as like a light-hearted fiction, because you know, when I'm tired before bed, I couldn't read that because it was too much for me. It was literally just like, and so many words I had to like look up, because I was like, am I a fraud? Am I a science girly or not? Because there were so many, I guess, terms that I wasn't familiar with. So just keep that in mind, but really good. I think did I give that a 6 or a 7? Oh, I gave it an 8. An 8. Okay, yeah, cute. Yeah, the level of genetics knowledge is quite high, but very good. Now the next one I also don't have because I gave it to my brother. It is The Handmaid's Tale. It is fiction. It is fiction-y fiction. It's dystopian. It's drama. It's, you know, not real, like not feasible. I read it because I think a couple of my family members were watching the series, and I was like, I knew enough about it. I knew that it was dystopian. It was about like women being forced, I suppose, to sort of carry children and have the children taken away. And I was like, that is not for me. And I'm a bit conscious as well, like trigger warnings to SA and that sort of thing. I was like, I don't enjoy stories about assault and brutality for women, so like I'm just going to appreciate that and just look the other way kind of thing. But it got to the point where I think I saw it in a store and I was like, it's a sign, so I bought it. And it's quite small, actually. I was surprised by how small the book was. The book was phenomenal. It wasn't too graphic, I found, because I was prepared like for, you know, rape scenes and stuff to just literally skip them. But it was quite mild, to be honest with you. It was fine for me. And I think what I imagined in my mind, like the dystopia, it was very well done. It was very feasible. It starts off normal, and then we have, oh my gosh, no one can get pregnant. Babies aren't viable. Why? Because of the pollution and the air quality and everything. Like everyone is just going sterile. We can't, like, we're dying out as a and like the way that they did it, I was just like, yeah, that could happen. And yeah, it's like about terrorism and government and ethics and power, and like massively about religion, and it was just so interesting. I loved it. And yeah, I think that it was written so well, and there was a lot of really good like relationships, and like the character development was great. Like the protagonist is just, and then after that I watched the series. I binged it. I watched it all in like less than a month, and the brand new season's out. I'm all over it. So if you're a Handmaid's Tale girly like me, tell me what you think, because it is easily one of my favorite series right now. And if you're thinking about reading it, highly recommend reading it. I do recommend reading it before watching it. I gave that a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I put here page turner, the badass lead. And I just want to say as well, I have never watched a TV show where the acting is that incredible. The wife, the main wife, she is probably the most incredible actress ever. And the lead, incredible. Like every actor is. Also, I will note as well that the book is quite small, and the book ends like pretty quickly, and it's only been like, I don't know, a week, maybe more in the book. And then like the series goes over like years, and they just did such a good job like going from there and taking off, and oh, like the development was just chef's kiss. I love it so much. I want them to keep making Handmaid's Tale. I'm obsessed with it. Honestly, I'm obsessed. Okay, the next book is, who did I give it to? I gave it to my friend Lara. It is Still Alice. Now this book, I think I just saw it on Goodreads, and I was like, oh, interesting. Like I know the actress on the front of it, and it was from the motion picture. Like there was an adaptation, a movie version, and I had never heard of it. And I was like, that's a bad sign. But I read the plot and I was like, oh, okay, like psychology professor, we're talking about neurological disease, degenerative. I was like, yeah, let's do that. And it had really high ratings. I, again, read this one so quickly because it was such a page turner. It was such a unique read. It is taken from the perspective of the protagonist, who has early onset Alzheimer's disease. And you're viewing everything from her point of view, with her knowledge and her understanding and her forgetfulness, of course. And it's real, and it's sad, and there isn't a happy ending. There's not like an overly sad ending. You don't really know how it ends. Sorry if this is a spoiler. I'm trying like my best not to have any spoilers at all. But basically, yeah, I loved that it was real, and yeah, it was just like a wholesome, good read. I really, really liked it, and my mum read it straight after me, and she really liked it. She was like bawling her eyes out. We were on holiday together, and she was like, oh, so good though. Now moving on to, I'm gonna call it the best book series that I have ever read. And I'm not usually like a series girl, and I haven't read that many. I think the last one I read was like Twilight, and I read like The Hunger Games and, you know, whatever. But big girl series, this one takes the absolute cake. It is the Robert Langdon series by Dan Brown. Okay, so here I have DaVinci Code and The Lost Symbol. The first book is Angels and Demons, which I've lent to my friend Monique. Basically, there's 4 in this book. There's a 4th one that I'm yet to read, Digital Fortress, I think it's called. Oh no, is it the other one? Might be Origin. I think it's Digital Fortress. And the first one is Angels and Demons. Angels and Demons, the best one. I think it is so underrated. Everyone talks about the DaVinci Code. The DaVinci Code is great, but Angels and Demons, that's where it's at. I am quite literally obsessed with Dan Brown's writing. It is so evident that he does so much research on like the topics and the symbology, because obviously it's basically about a Harvard symbologist who is like a professor, and he's just like this world-renowned expert in symbols, whether that's like Illuminati symbols, religious symbols, like he's just a fiend of symbols. And basically he's contacted because there's something that no one can crack, and it sounds kind of like, oh yeah, that's really fictiony, but the way that it's written, it's just so real and good and juicy, and the plot twist, like you never see it coming. I remember just being so shook at the end of Angels and Demons, and I was just like, okay, let's go on to DaVinci Code. There can't be a twist like that. There was a twist like that. And I am reading I finished it. What am I saying? I finished this last week. The twist in this was, I want to say you could see it coming, but I didn't see it coming. But the twist as well, amazing, literally amazing. And I think that the main character is really likable, but again, it's the writing that does it for me. Like just the plot, the development, like it's so good. It's like conspiracy theories and, you know, terrorism and religion and corruption, and it's just so good. All of them are so good, but my preference, Angels and Demons, which, did I give it 10 out of 10 to? It probably deserves, yeah, I gave it a 10 out of 10. Angels and Demons, 10 out of 10. DaVinci Code, 9 out of 10. The Lost Symbol, 9 out of 10. These are insanely high ratings. But yeah, I said what I said. So run, do not walk to your local bookstore and read these if you have not yet already. Next up is The Butchering Art. And I was like, oh cute, like a ye-old medieval book about surgery. It wasn't really. I think The Butchering Art is like almost a little bit misleading. Yes, it's kind of about surgery, but the whole premise of the book from memory is the discovery of sanitation, sterilization, and how doctors would literally just use like the same dirty scalpel, blunt scalpel for this patient, like they didn't even wipe it in between, like, and they were just like, oh, why is infection like just so bad? And they really thought that like pus and everything was like a normal way of wound healing, but yeah, it was like Pasteur, and you know, I learned a lot from this book. Good book, I liked it a lot, I learned a lot, and so many of these things are just like, ew, did that really happen? It's a little bit like gruesome and like visual, of course, because it's about like surgery and like disgusting bodily fluids and stuff, but I really liked it. It was really good. I gave it an 8 out of 10. This book, again, I don't have it because my mum has it. It's Hidden Valley Road, a story of an American family. Is that what it's called? Yes. Okay. So I gave this one an 8 out of 10. It is basically a story of, it is non-fiction as well, which I love. Basically, there's this family in the US, and I think there's like 8 children, and like 6 of them, oh, is it less than that? I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's like 6 out of 8 of them have schizophrenia. And this was at a time where schizophrenia was thought to be caused by the mother not parenting the child right. And so this was pretty key in the discovery that, oh hey, there's like a strong hereditary component to psychiatric diseases such as schizophrenia. And a lot of it is about like the research and treatments, and about how how grim the reality is that, yeah, we can try antipsychotics, but they're not very good. And these people, what quality of life do they have? And yeah, it's really, really interesting. Again, it's kind of a little bit historical, but it's not really, because it wasn't that long ago. But because my master's was in schizophrenia, it's like something that's very close to my heart as like a disease, as a pathology, and I'm very interested in it. And I really liked it. Again, if you're a medical science girly, it's a really good one. Oh, okay. This next one, another. I was recommended this by a friend who loved it. And it's non-fiction. And I was like, I love non-fiction. But it was like, not romance, like, I don't know. It also had really high reviews on Goodreads. So I was like, let's do it. Let's read it. I hated it. I hated it. It's basically about an Australian woman who is, I guess, scammed kind of with a man who's just a narcissist and a con artist and a liar. It's kind of giving Tinder swindler, but Australian, and before that was a thing. But he's also not swindling for money. He's just like a liar and a shit guy. And I just remember reading this, and there's just so many red flags that she either ignored or just like didn't pick up. And yeah, the whole book was just like, oh, whinge, woe is me. And I just found it so not relatable, and I didn't enjoy it. It didn't add any positive value to my life. I didn't learn anything. I didn't feel bad for her, which is an awful thing to say, but honestly, like, I feel like she knowingly put herself in that position. She was like, oh, he keeps lying to me. But that's fine. Like, queen, know what you deserve. I didn't like that. And I gave that a 4 out of 10. Next up, I do have this one. So again, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo that I mentioned earlier was written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I just have high expectations, like all the way up to here. I gave it literally a 10 out of 10. I read her other very famous books. She does have a couple, but this one kept coming up. Daisy Jones and the Six. I was like, I'm in for a good time because her previous book was so good. This was so painfully average. Again, the writing was fine, the characters were fine, but like the story, I was just like, ugh. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't find it interesting. It wasn't a page turner. It was kind of like a love triangle. So basically it's in interview format, just as Seven Husbands, but it's nowhere near as good. And it's, I don't know, it's very like glamorizing rock and roll and that lifestyle of just like not looking after yourself and doing drugs and like just, oh yeah, that's the way it is. And like, you know, not being there for your wife and your kid. And like, it's just, I don't know. I don't like it. I didn't like it. And I know that there is another third really common book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, Malibu Rising, that my friends are saying is better, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can trust that because I was so let down by this. But yeah, I really wish that I hadn't read Daisy Jones and the Six. It was a complete waste of time. It was super boring and I didn't like it. Next up is Where the Crawdads Sing. I don't know why I picked this up. This is not my cup of tea. It's fiction and it's old. It's set like in the 60s and I was just like, no, it's about race and, you know, outcasting or whatever. But I think, was it my boss who recommended it to me? I think it was. And the start of it is like kind of sad. There's like abandonment and like it's just kind of grim, and it was kind of boring and it was really slow, like for the first, I don't know, probably quarter. Boom, murder. Boom, love story. Boom, assault. Boom, love triangle. So good. There's so much in here, and it became so good. And the end itself is a 10 out of 10, but just because of the slow start, I don't think it was necessary that there was that much like background. I was like, yeah, okay, she's been abandoned, like carry on. I ended up giving this a 8 out of 10. Yeah, okay, so it's a love story, a drama. It's about self-preservation, deceit. It's juicy. You don't know what happened. You don't know who did it. Also, the movie adaptation, which just came out at the movies, I went and saw it with a girlfriend, is really good. They did a really good job of the movie adaptation. I think like the characters are really good, and like I thought the movie was really well done. So would recommend the book, and I would recommend the show. Movie. It's a movie. Next is, yeah, this one. Assembly. Again, it's another cute little artsy read. It's alternative. It's fun. It wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy this. It's kind of about race. This black woman's dating this white boy and they go to his family. And I was like, this has the potential to be like a really good thriller. Like murder? Yes. No, it was boring. She's also really depressed. So like a massive mental health depression trigger warning, like suicidality, that kind of thing. I didn't enjoy this. I feel so indifferent towards it. I was really disappointed. I was like, oh my god, like cute little books, like it can just be so much like fun-filled, packed drama. No, it was boring. Written well, like stylistically, the author is like talented, but I'm like story-wise, I didn't like it, sorry. I said, a bit weird, short, non-memorable. It was a bit dark, strong suicide trigger warning. It's about race and judgment. I didn't enjoy it. It was a bit of a waste of time. 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 is a high rating for a waste of time. Oh my gosh. Okay, this one, I wish I had the physical copy because I love this book so much. This is probably the most important book that I read this year. It is What Really Happened in Wuhan. This is peak non-fiction science medical genre. This book is an exposition I'm so overwhelmed by this. I'm having trouble articulating it. Basically, it is this, I believe she's Australian. She presents all of the information that is available. I think, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but the information that we have for the origins of coronavirus to be from a natural source, from the, what was it, a wet market, the likelihood of that being the reason for the outbreak. It also presents the evidence for it to be a lab leak, accidental or otherwise, from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the evidence that gain of function viruses so similar to COVID-19 have been there for a very long time. And there's this one particular scientist that it's about, and when it was first ever estimated, so it's believed that the first case of coronavirus happened well before the reported case from the CCP. There's some surveillance of Wuhan going into this mad lockdown and shutting everything, and reporters were going missing trying to find the truth and that sort of thing. So definitely take it with a grain of salt, but I was so of the opinion that, oh, a lab leak, like that's a conspiracy theory. When you look at the science and the nature of this virus, it is very hard to believe that it is not manufactured to be a gain of function virus. How suspicious. And I think that they did a really good job of like, here, look at this, here, look at this. We don't know what happened, but like, this is all the information that we have, which is a bit suspicious. And I think that it did a really good job of not being like conspiracy, like, look at this, look at this. I think it was really well written. And I definitely was so, I think, cynical when I started. I was like, this is going to be so poorly written, cherry picking, you know, things that substantiate her point of view. But no, it was a really well-rounded view, I think, of the origins of the coronavirus, and it was so good. It is so good. I think everyone needs to read it. It's a really important read. It's not just about the origins of coronavirus. It's about the conspiracy and corruption and control of the Chinese Communist Party, and how the rest of the world and the United Nations and the WHO are just kind of like, oh, we believe you, China, whatever you say. And China's just like, these fucking idiots. So really good book, highly recommend. Like, if you take one recommendation away from today, it's what really happened in Wuhan, and this is going to hurt. Yeah. And the Dan Brown series. God, I've read some really good ones this year. It's been quite successful. And finally, we have Scrubbed by Dr. Nikki Stamp. Dr. Nikki Stamp is the only female cardiothoracic surgeon in Australia. Yes, that's what I said. She is really big on social media. I follow her on Instagram. She's like all about like that, I don't know, like science communication, using social media as like a platform to like educate and network and whatever. And I really like her. I find her really likable, and she posts a lot of really good information. And so I was so excited for this book, and it's really good. It's like a really nice recount of like the struggles and, you know, being a woman in medicine, medicine in Australia. I really liked it. It's a really good book. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. A heart surgeon's extraordinary memoir of life, death, and everything in between. And I guess her sort of sacrifices of like failed marriage, not having kids, how she's perceived in the workplace, working with predominantly men, and yeah, working a lot in healthcare, and how that has like, you know, changed her and all of her experiences and that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed that one. And yesterday I did a little haul, and also in my office I quite literally have about 45 books on my to read list. And so yeah, I will hopefully post another one of these in maybe like a couple months, and update you guys on what I have read between now and then. So if you do have any book recommendations, like what's your favorite book, like please leave it below, because I'm always looking for recommendations. But if you do like books, if you do like books like this, if you do like videos like these, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.